Let's talk about something we don't often hear about, the American church's role in slavery. It's a dark chapter, one that many would rather forget, but we can't afford to. For centuries, the American church, particularly white denominations, were deeply entangled with the institution of slavery. This wasn't just a passive acceptance either. Churches actively participated in and profited from the enslavement of African people. They bought, sold, and traded human beings as if they were mere commodities. This hypocrisy was staggering. The same institutions that preached love and compassion were complicit in one of the most brutal systems of oppression the world has ever known. And this wasn't a secret, folks. This was out in the open, woven into the fabric of American society. Now, you might be wondering, how could they do that? How could people of faith justify such cruelty? Well, they found ways. They twisted scripture using the Bible to argue that slavery was ordained by God. They claimed that Africans were inferior, that they were meant to serve their white masters. This wasn't just about ignorance or blind faith, it was about power. By controlling the narrative, by defining right and wrong, the church solidified its own authority and the dominance of white supremacy. They used the very institution meant to uplift the human spirit to crush it. Then came the Civil War, the end of slavery. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? That the church would finally see the error of its ways and fight for equality. But it wasn't that simple. While some churches welcomed newly freed black Americans, many others clung to segregation. They refused to integrate their congregations, their schools, their communities. The church in many ways became a pillar of Jim Crow, upholding the very system that replaced slavery. This wasn't just about separate water fountains and bus seats. It was about denying black Americans their basic humanity, their right to worship freely and equally. And again, the church used its influence to justify this discrimination, to perpetuate the cycle of oppression. Section 4. Separate and unequal churches as pillars of segregation. Think about the civil rights movement. Where did those brave activists find the strength to fight for justice? Often it was in the black church. They found solace in their faith, in the belief that a higher power demanded equality. But the white church, many remained silent, complicit in the face of injustice. Some even actively opposed the movement, siding with segregationists and denouncing civil rights leaders. They clung to their power, their privilege, unwilling to share the table of equality. Section 5. Echoes of the past, modern politics and the church. Now, you might think this is all ancient history, something we've moved past. But the legacy of this history still casts a long shadow. Look at the political landscape today. Look at the rise of Christian nationalism, the support for policies that target and marginalize minority communities. The same rhetoric used to justify slavery and segregation is being recycled today, often cloaked in religious language. It's about control, about maintaining power structures that benefit some at the expense of others. And the church, once again, is at the center of this battle. The fight for equality and justice continues, and the role of the church remains as influential as ever. Section 6. A reckoning deferred, confronting the past, shaping the future. We can't afford to ignore this history. We can't pretend it didn't happen. The church, like any institution, must be held accountable for its past. It must confront its sins, its complicity in systems of oppression. But more than that, it must actively work to dismantle those systems. It must use its platform to fight for justice, to amplify the voices of the marginalized, to be a force for good in the world. This isn't about tearing down faith, it's about building a more just and equitable society. And that starts with acknowledging the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Only then can we truly begin to heal the wounds of the past and create a future worthy of our highest ideals.